Hi everybody, my name is Edgar Kruize. Thank you very much for sticking around until the end of the first day of the Symposium F30 virtual symposium. Let's give a virtual round of applause to all participants today and a special thanks to D'Angela for putting this all together. It's been amazing so far. We've been talking about the Love Symbol album all day, and all of these talks only added more to the mystery and mystique of this 1992 album and its various spin-offs. What I want to attempt today is to combine all pieces that Prince put out there in an attempt to create the most cohesive version of the story of the Three Chains of Gold. So we have the album, which was released in October 1992. That was followed by some music videos and in December 2 TV specials. Then in early 1993, Prince took the album on the road and performed it as a rock soap opera during the Act 1 tour. 1 year later, in April 1994, a comic book was released, and then eventually in late 1994, the music video collection was released on VHS. So all in all, Prince spent 2 years telling the same story through what composer Wagner would call a Gesamtkunstwerk. Now supposedly it was the work on the comic book that more or less shaped the way the story would evolve. In the 1999 interview with magazine Uptown, writer Dwayne McDuffie said Prince gave him the lyrics to the songs of the album and he worked from there, and influences ran in both directions. Originally the comic book was planned for the summer of 1993 and it was supposed to be released as a deluxe edition, coming with a CD with unreleased music on it. Now that version never saw the light of day, but the comic book we did get very much feels like a pulp adventure book. Now to enhance that feel, cover artist Steve Park drew up a picture of Prince and Maite that very much resembles the movie poster for Romancing the Stone. Prince didn't like it. He wanted more of a James Bond vibe, and so Steve Park worked from there, and this is what eventually became the cover for the Three Chains of Gold comic. As Prince worked on the concept of the album, he kept adding music, eventually ending up with more songs that could fit on a CD. At one point it was considered adding the extra music on a cassette version of the album, but eventually it was decided to delete some of the segues that helped the listener to understand the story and to make room for the song I Wanna Melt With You. Luckily an acetate of the original configuration has leaked, so we have these segues to help us piece together the complete version of the story. So let's dive into it. Let's treat the story as if it were a book, and let's treat each version of the story as if it were a separate gospel. So we have one gospel that is the album, and we'll use the deleted segues as apocryphal elements. And then we have the second gospel, which is the live show. The third gospel is the comic book, and the fourth and final gospel, and we'll use the TV specials here as well as apocryphal work, is the video. And all these gospels tell the same story, each with their own nuances, inconsistencies and conflicting details, very much like the Gospels in the Bible. And the basic story is that of Princess Maite, a crown princess from a Middle Eastern country, which is ruled by the one owning the Three Chains of Gold. Her father gets killed, so to protect the Three Chains, she turns to Prince and they fall in love. That's basically it. But there's a lot more to unpack. More than I can do in a lot of time today, so let's determine the most essential story elements first and see how they fit in each gospel. Okay, so here they are. The first item is the assassination of the princess's father. Second is the way Prince and the princess meet. The courtship of the prince and the princess. The press harassing Prince. Prince hesitating to commit. The battle for the Three Chains. And death and rebirth. And I'll rate each segment from 0 to 3 symbols depending on how significant it is within that gospel. Now the assassination is the catalyst of the story. On the album it's not really obvious, but in one of the last segues that was between the flow and 7 we can hear Maite say this.
I know the 7 men killed my father.
Now the video is more graphic. In both the Act 1 TV special and the Three Chains of Gold video collection, we see that the 7 men that kill him are actually Princess Maite's bodyguards, and they brutally stab him while the princess is taking a bath. And both album and film portrait Maite as the Crown Princess of Cairo, The pyramid on the back of the album is also telling that this takes place in Egypt. The comic book is actually totally different. Here the father is an elderly emir of the fictional country of Erech, who gets in a quarrel with his power-hungry brother, who pushes him and accidentally kills him. But the comic book makes sure to state that the brother was planning on killing him anyway. In all these versions, the father remains nameless, but in the live show we do get a name. Before the concert started, it was announced that King Abdul Aziz and his lovely daughter Maite were present that evening. Now during that show, no one was assassinated, but Prince did kidnap the daughter. And Prince and Maite meeting during a concert is actually inspired by real events. And even her sending him videos is inspired by real events. Maite and her parents went to shows in 1990, and that's where Prince and Maite first met. One of those videos that she sent him can actually be seen in the 3 Chainz movie. Now how they meet is less apparent from the 3 Chains of Gold video collection. But I have an hypothesis that The Right Divine, the second of the 2 TV specials, is actually an extra chapter to that movie. After Sexy MF, we see Prince and Troy Bayer frolic in the cinema, and the movie Barbarella is playing, but he can't get Maite out of his head, even though at this point in the film she only sent him those videos. Well, nevertheless, they spend the night, and I believe that The Right Divine is actually set the next day. Troy arrives at Paisley Park with her hair still messy, wearing the same clothes Prince wore when we last saw them together in that hallway scene. And it's almost like if she woke up after their night together and the only thing she could find to wear was the outfit Prince had left on the floor. Prince is missing in action throughout the first part of The Right Divine, but when he eventually arrives in true James Bond style, we also see Princess Maite for the first time, as well as her bodyguards, as they enter Prince's world. Now the story, as we can hear it on the album, especially when you add the various segues, is for the larger part written from Maite's point of view. The opening segment that was eventually cut is actually set in 1997. So when the album was released, the story was set in the future. A 5-year-old boy called Michael digs up 3 chains of gold from the dirt. He brings them to his mother, which turns out to be Princess Maite. And her thoughts wander back 5 years, and that's where the story starts. Now the beginning of the album, as it originally was intended, ties in perfectly with the end of the 3 Chainz video collection, in which we see Prince bury the 3 Chainz. Had the album opening stayed intact, movie and album would have been a continuous loop together, a yin and a yang. Now as far as the story goes, the romance progresses, and around the time blue light kicks in, Prince and Maite consummate their love. This happens, or is suggested, on the album. It's also suggested in the movie, and it's also in the stage show. It's not addressed in the comic book, but there is little time for romance in there, as it's more or less an action-packed adventure. Now here's how that fits in, and then we continue to the next point, which is about the relationship of Prince with the press. And one of the most vexing characters in the story is journalist Vanessa Bartholomew, portrayed by Kirstie Alley in the movie and on the album. And in the comic book, the character actually looks like her. And in the stage show, the part of Vanessa is played by dancer Kelly Conno. Now the whole Vanessa character is written as annoying deliberately. It seems Prince invented the character to mock the press that has always been focusing on his love life or his erratic behavior, but not on his art. His grievances are channeled through the way the Vanessa character is written. It's Vanessa that keeps harassing Prince about the age of the princess, who's 16 on the album and on the stage show, but in the Act 1 TV special she's 18. Now in that special, Vanessa Bartholomew is missing, but you can see it's very much structured like a trash documentary, only focusing on the dirt and the gossip. We see the MPG, this incarnation, actually being the first time Prince had an all-male band, and they are bragging about the album, dissing Prince for wanting to incorporate new flavors of music, and they also are bad-mouthing Maite. They feel she disturbs the group dynamic. Now as a standalone special, it is a very weird way to promote the album, but if you see the broader picture, it very much fits the narrative. And there are also songs like The Morning Papers, for instance, and The Flow. They're also about bad journalism. Now within the stage show, we see Prince burning music critics' reviews of his albums during My Name is Prince. And during the morning papers, Prince-approved newspapers are spread throughout the audience. Now the Vanessa Bartholomew character gets harassed and mocked during the performance and eventually gets stripped of her clothes in public by the Game Boys in an attempt to embarrass her. And this scene really hasn't aged well. So now we move on to commitment. Prince's way with women has always been notorious. All the women he's been with more or less tell you the same story. There were always others. This is also addressed in all the Gospels, except the family-friendly comic book, of course. In the movie we see Prince break up with Maite before Sweet Baby. On the album and in the Act 1 TV special, he proceeds to have sex with another woman and phone sex with Carmen Electra at the same time in the Continental. And in the video collection, that particular song is cut before the Carmen segment begins. However, we do see him get off with the other woman. But eventually he loses interest because he can't get Maite out of his head. And even the last minute edition I Wanna Melt With You plays a significant part in that movie, acting as the soundtrack to a nightmare Maite is having, in which she relives her father's death and also at the same time dreams of a masked prince having an orgy. The song also is played in The Ride to Find, and Prince is wearing the exact same mask here. And it has a kind of a Phantom of the Opera feel to me, but it also reminds me of the Party Man video and slightly less of Bad Dance, of course. Could this be a version of the Gemini character we see here? I got two sides and they're both friends, Prince sings in My Name is Prince. Now could this be his other side? After all, duality is a recurring theme in Prince's body of work, but I don't have the time to dive into that right now as we move on to the battle for the three chains. The three chains are referred to as the three chains of Turin on the album, in the segues, and in the movie. In the comic book they're just referred to as the three chains of gold. And together they form the symbol that would eventually become Prince's name and is also the title of the album. And with the comic being called Three Chains of Gold, the movie being called Three Chains of Gold, maybe the album telling the same story should have been titled Three Chains of Gold as well. Anyway, the three chains are the MacGuffin of the story. And MacGuffin is a term for an object or an element that drives the plot forward, but it serves for no further purpose. Neither do these chains, but the fact that they give the owner some form of power is what drives the story. In the comic book, the three chains are separated and spread out. One is passed from Princess Maite to Prince in an attempt to keep it safe. The other was worn by her father and taken by her uncle. And the third one is hidden in the tomb of the legendary and mythical Sumerian king Gilgamesh. In this version of the story, Prince is an absolute action hero, taking out assassins single-handedly. The Prince we see here could not be more different to the Prince that we see in the Three Chains movie and during the Act 1 stage show. There he lets the others do the dirty work, for instance having his brother/bodyguard Dwayne Nelson take care of the assassins that killed the Prince's father. Now during the stage show he does conquer the assassins himself though. He's playing a ferocious guitar solo in the finale of the song Three Chains of Gold, and that's when they all fall. Now in all incarnations of the story, Prince eventually distances himself from the chains when he gets them, either by burying them or by giving the power to rule to the rightful heir, Princess Maite. Now that ties in perfectly with the tagline that was used in that era, to whom it may concern, you must come to your senses, there are no kings on this earth, only princes. And also with the opening song, My Name is Prince. My name is Prince and I won't be king. Now that song, along with the Max, is the only song that's present in all incarnations of the story. And along with Seven, it's possibly the most significant song on the album. Now let me try to break down my hypothesis by starting with the line, together we'll love through all space and time. And especially space and time is significant here. I feel that the story that is told is not only linear from 1997 to 1992 and back again, but also literally through all space and time. Now Prince has always been fascinated by time and reality, and most of us would say that reality moves in a three-dimensional place from A to Z. Stuff happens over time. But there's another approach called eternalism, which sometimes referred to as a block universe. This views reality as a four-dimensional place where nothing happens, or one could argue, everything happens at the same time. Within this particular philosophy of time, all is just there, at the same time, past, present, future. And I believe the story of the Three Chains is structured that way, with Prince and Maite as soulmates that have met again and again and again and again through all the ages since the beginning of time. There are clues everywhere, from sex CMF, in this life and the next, to a God-created woman, for instance. And if I never see you again, it's alright, I'll have your love in the end. And in the cut segue between Blue Light and Sweet Baby, Prince explains, talking through a voice box, that he's now in his fifth soul.
Why do you pretend?
And the story is literally going back to the start of time, as My Name is Prince suggests that he is the first man, Adam. That was actually his first soul. In the beginning, God made the sea, and on the seventh day, he made me. Now, on a side note, I remember going to a Prince concert in 1990 in Rotterdam and seeing this sign on the stadium ramps. Could it have been an inspiration? I don't know. I'd like to think so. Anyway, the Adam and Eve theme is recurring in Prince's entire body of work. But it's present here as well. In Arrogance, there's this segment about Eve biting the apple. And in God Created Woman, the creation of the soulmate is the subject. One of my ribs he took, and it shall be bone of my bones. Well, the songs are not chronological, but within the block universe that doesn't matter, because all is happening at the same time. And because of that, the next incarnation is in the next verse of My Name is Prince. Bear with me, as things might be a little bit complicated, but I think it could be that the prince here might actually not be the prince we all know, but rather the prince of Egypt, Moses. Now, Moses was a prince that wouldn't be king. He had another calling. And also Moses went to the top of the mountain, literally. And then he came back and he saw the people he led out of Egypt worshipping the golden calf and do things that save your face, but they won't save your soul. You can fill in the rest, with the 10 Commandments actually being the rules that the people need to learn. Now, Prince has referred to Moses in the book of Exodus in his work before and after, and there's more to it. Egyptology is a big theme, especially in the visual style of the album, the comic book and the videos. And we know Prince was intrigued by Egypt, and especially the pharaoh Akhenaten. And Prince at one point believed himself to be a reincarnation of Akhenaten, and Maite being a reincarnation of his wife Nefertiti. Now, Maite mentions this in her book, but you can also see it as a hidden message in the music video for The One. Now, on a side note, I actually believe that the video for The One also ties in with the story of the Three Chains. Structured like a silent movie, we see Prince and Maite in their 1921 souls in black and white, and then remembering their time in Egypt together in full color. And instead of the end, the final shot says the beginning, and which ties in neatly with the segue I played earlier. But I digress. There's a lot to be said here, and we need to keep this story as short as possible. Now, Akhenaten. He's known for abandoning Egypt's traditional polytheism and introducing monotheism, as well as his androgynous looks, and changing his name during his reign. And there are scholars that actually believe that the historical figure of Moses and the historical Akhenaten are one and the same. And this idea ties My Name is Prince perfectly with the Egyptian theme. It also makes sense that we don't see Prince with his face in the music video at this point in time. He's just every man and every incarnation at the same time. And then of course there's 7, which is the finale of this story in the video, which strangely enough omits the title track. And it's also the finale of the first part of the stage show. And this is where the two souls, Prince and Maite, interlock once again. The 3 chains are safe, and together they don't only love through all space and time, but also walk straight into the apocalypse, knowing they will be alright and there will be forever a new start. They are surrounded by their 12 future souls. Now, within the album, the song is not only about the book of Revelations, which is emphasized by one of the many mirror messages that is hidden in the artwork. You should definitely check that out. It's a nice puzzle, but it also doubles as the moment that the 7 assassins are disposed of. In the live show, it's the uplifting apotheosis of the story. Prince and Maite are free. And in the music video, however, it serves as a different purpose, as we see Prince also kill off 7 versions of himself, allowing himself to change and transform. One could even argue he's killing the 7 deadly sins that he used to indulge in. Maite explains this in the movie's epilogue when calling Vanessa Bartholomew. One thing to notice is that she's also citing a Japanese connection that will lead into the interactive chapter, which was actually from the year that this video was released. This spoken word section is implicating that the story actually continues beyond the scope of the three chains. One could make a very strong case for that actually, through the Gold era, Child of the Sun era, Emancipation, but that's all for another time and place, not for today. But she ends by saying Prince wants her to tell the truth. And in one of the last scenes we see the changed Prince, who signs the Japanese connection documents with his changed name. Now the album ends very differently, but actually it's more or less the same. If we reinsert the segue that used to be in front of the sacrifice of Victor. And this time it's not Maite calling Vanessa Bartholomew, but it's Prince, and he says this. And instead of Maite telling the truth, Prince does that himself, with the more than ever before autobiographical The Sacrifice of Victor. And he asks the church to open the book of Victor. So basically we are now leaving the four Gospels we've been talking about, and we're entering a new phase. Now, if you're interested, you really should check out the lyric section in the booklet for this album to really take a deep dive into the Sacrifice of Victor. There are many mirror messages, and it deserves its own presentation one day. Maybe tomorrow someone will speak about it, but not me. My time is almost up for now, so I'm going to wind things up. So here you have it, the basics of the story of the three chains as presented in four different Gospels in the first four columns. And then the apocryphal elements in the last one. And there's much more layers to be added, much more storylines to discover, much more to investigate, but there's little time to do that today. Now, I vividly remember buying the album the day it came out in October 1992, and I was immediately intrigued by its mystery and the hidden messages. And I've been puzzling with all the ingredients presented ever since. And I don't think I'm the only one. And I also believe we've all only scratched the surface of the meaning of this story over the last 30 years because of the scattered way it was presented. Now, if the rumors are true, we will be getting a Diamonds and Pearls / Love Symbol combined Super Deluxe edition later this year. And I really hope the estate acknowledges Prince's artistic vision from this specific era by putting most content neatly together in one package. That way we can take the deep dive this story deserves. But that's for another day. For now, this is all the time I have. So thank you for your interest and enjoy the rest of the symposium. Good evening.